Hey guys, Professor Hoback here. Just wanted to give you a rundown on what the HRD is. That stands for Hoback Rolling Detent. Now, if you have no idea what that is, then I guess I'll have to explain it to you. I invented the rolling detent for the folder back in 2003, 2004, somewhere in between. Actually based off the tip of a ballpoint pen, of all things. Just happened to be drawing some pictures and noticed it and thought, why does a detent on a folding knife need to be a fixed press fit ball in the lock bar to prevent the blade from opening unintentionally, and then also to raise the lock bar off of the blade when it opens to reduce friction. So I started coming up with the designs. The first thing I actually did was pull the tip out of a ballpoint pen and press fit it into a frame. Worked like crap. But from that point, I'm like, all right, you know what? This kind of proves the idea. It'll actually work. Went around the country looking for places that could do this. A lot of the Swiss turning places just couldn't hold the tolerance that was needed to have a threaded set screw with a swedged ball bearing. Worked with a whole slew of different people that really helped me kind of figure out, you know, what to use, where we could have things made, maybe potentially places that make something that will work in a similar fashion that's already produced, because that's usually the cheapest option. Ended up finding a place in Japan that could make them for us, and we've been using them ever since. Excellent source, high precision, and we've been using it ever since, so it works great. So we've had prototypes made of different varying designs for different features. This is a giganto-sized one. I'll come up to the camera here a little closer so you can kind of see. This obviously is not a set screw. This is just a press fit or a flange bolt mount. And then you have a rolling bearing in here. So this is the simplistic way to show this. Our designs are actually M3 by 0.5 diameter on the threads, and then the ball is actually swedged to where it still rolls, but it's still tight inside the bore. This one's actually got a sleeve that press fits on the outside like a typical roller bearing is. This is a lot of the time the application for something this size would be on a conveyor system. Or an automation system in a big factory, and you'd have a whole slew of these laid out to where pallets and stuff could roll over the top of them. The actual HRD is very small, but I'll draw it on the board and kind of show you guys, you know, what the internals look like. So you start with a small shaft that's threaded. Like I said, it's M3 by 0.5. It's got a 1/16 inch hex broached into the bottom. Threads over here are M3 by 0.5. And then at the top, it comes up to a slight point, and then you have a partial cup. And then you have your bearing inside. So the reason I chose this setup was twofold. The precision in which we could have it made, and then also the fact that when you roll this bearing over a surface and you add oil to this surface here, just pretend oil obviously, when the ball rolls, the oil will wrap around the ball, but it'll also skim off on the bottom and start to fill this small reservoir full of oil. So what ends up happening is the HRD becomes self-lubricating to a degree for a limited period of time, usually lasts about a month, and then you'll have opened the knife enough times where the oil has dissipated enough that you'll need to re-oil the detent track a little bit with one drop of oil usually does it. And that does it. That's the HRD. That's the Hoback Rolling Detent. I had provisional patent on it for a while. Let that lapse. I let a lot of people use the idea as long as they just call it the Hoback Rolling Detent. Typically just people ask for permission. Quite a number of knife makers out there that are using the HRD now, so just pay attention to it. If you happen to see a rolling detent on a folder, chances are it's a Hoback Rolling Detent, or they're just not wanting to kind of pay the tribute, even though it's kind of an open source sort of thing. But yeah, that's how it works. Some of the reasons why I feel it's better than a standard detent is that when I'll erase this real quick so I can draw lots of characters. So I'll do some very crude drawings here. Your standard detent. Here's your frame. Your detent will ride on your lock bar. Say there. You would typically take a 1/16 or 5/30 or 3/32 ball bearing, ceramic or stainless steel, whatever, and you would drill a hole that's slightly undersized, about a thou undersized, 5/10 undersized in your frame, and then you would press fit that ball bearing into the lock bar. So then it's stationary, and then when you close the blade, that detent rides along into a detent hole until the blade closes. So basically it just drags along. Works really well. You can make it very smooth. It has some advantages, some disadvantages. I'm sure as you found they do wear out. You send a knife back to a knife maker, they end up having to punch that out, and hopefully they can press in another ball bearing if it hasn't stretched the liner out enough to where it will hold another bearing again. If it has, then they have to peen the hole closed and then press in a new bearing. It's got some issues. So my kind of reinventing the wheel, so to speak, is that now that you don't press fit this in, but you thread it in, 1, it's replaceable. 2, it's slightly adjustable for detent pressure. And then 3, it rolls along this edge. It creates a smoother feel. It does feel different. There are some tricks that you can do to a fixed detent, like flattening the bottom of the detent ever so slightly, that'll make it quite a bit smoother. With a HRD, it rolls along the surface. So it does have some downsides. Your surfaces do have to be a little bit smoother than a standard detent. Otherwise, what will happen is it'll feel like a car tire rolling over a bumpy surface. So if it's not smooth, you can kind of feel those bumps a little bit more than if you had a fixed detent that had a flattened bottom on it. But other than that, you have exponential life compared to a standard press fit detent. Of all of the years that I've been doing this, since 2003, 2004, I believe in total I've replaced maybe 5 or 6 HRDs. And to put that into perspective, we've probably sold 7,000 or 8,000 folders with HRDs in them. Potentially more than that. I'm just kind of guessing at this point. We've done so many folders I don't even keep track. So 3 to 5 out of all of those is pretty awesome. Now to expand upon that even a little bit further, of those 3 to 5, let's say there's 5 that I had to replace. I would venture a guess that 3 of those were due to negligent neglect, like full-on neglect, like never been oiled, never been bothered. And the cool part about the HRD is that when it fails, it does not fail in a spectacular fashion. It fails into the default mode of a press fit ball bearing detent. So the ball will seize inside of the set screw body, and then it'll just act like a normal detent. So its failure mode is still a function mode, which is fantastic. The whole military motto of 2 is 1, 1 is none sort of jargon works really well for this because its failure mode still works. If you fail a press fit detent, typically what will happen is the detent actually will fall out You know, I've heard of that happening quite often. Or you just wear it out to the point where it grinds so flat that it no longer engages the hole to keep the blade closed. Then that is a failure point in the fact that that blade could open very easily in your pocket. So, you know, everything has pluses and minuses. It does add a little bit of complication to add an HRD. It is a little bit larger than a standard, you know, 0.0625 diameter press fit ball bearing. You know, the M3 by 0.5 requires you drill a 106 thousandths diameter hole and then tap it M3 by 0.5. So it's roughly 116 thousandths in diameter to the end of the threads, outside to outside. So full circumference, or excuse me, radius. So, you know, there are some slight disadvantages to that. You know, space constraints sometimes, especially really small knives. I.e. our MK Ultra, we used a press fit ball bearing because the liners were so thin and the parts are so small that we just couldn't fit an HRD into it. Just wasn't feasible unless we redesign the HRD to be even smaller than it already is, which requires a great deal of more tool up and everything else. But yeah, you know, it's got some distinct advantages, and I just wanted to kind of give everybody the heads up. I've given this spiel, it seems like a million times over the last almost 20 years of, you know, doing all this knife making stuff and doing interviews and stuff like that. Got a couple of magazine articles and a book article written on the HRD. And Knife Mechanisms by Leroy Price is a really good book that has 3 pages dedicated, 2 to 3 pages dedicated to the rolling detent and my thoughts on lock geometry for frame locks or the leaf lock. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy this little insight into why we do what we do, some of the stuff that we do, and hope you appreciate it. Have a great day, guys.